At 7:59 a.m., the office was still cloaked in the soft shadows of early morning, the fluorescent lights flickering to life as if hesitant to illuminate the day. It was a typical scene in the corporate world, yet today held an unspoken tension that hummed in the air like an electric current. The clock ticked steadily, its rhythmic beat underscoring the anticipation that hung over the space like a thick fog. In a dimly lit corner, the manager settled into his chair, a predatory smile creeping across his face as he logged into his computer. He was a man who thrived on control, and this moment was his to seize. The familiar glow of the screen reflected back at him, revealing a world of data and secrets that lay at his fingertips. The office was void of other sounds, the hum of the air conditioning was the only backdrop to his quiet machinations. As he entered his password, a sense of satisfaction washed over him. This was not just another day at work, this was an opportunity. He had always believed that knowledge was power, and today he intended to wield that power ruthlessly. With each keystroke, the manager felt the thrill of impending success course through him, a heady rush that was intoxicating and dangerous. The narrator, observing from a distance, couldn't help but feel a knot tighten in their stomach. They were acutely aware of the manager's penchant for crossing lines, a trait that often went unnoticed by those around him. It was as if the walls themselves were closing in, sensing the recklessness that was about to unfold. The manager navigated through the labyrinth of files on his desktop, his eyes gleaming with determination. He was searching for something that would elevate him in the eyes of his superiors, something that would cement his status as indispensable. The thrill of the hunt was palpable and he reveled in it, yet beneath his confident exterior there was an undercurrent of anxiety. The knowledge that he was treading on thin ice, that one wrong move could unravel everything, lingered like a shadow. But the manager dismissed it, convinced that he was too clever to get caught. As the minutes ticked by, the office began to stir with the arrival of employees, their chatter filling the silence. But the manager remained focused, his mind set on the prize that lay just out of reach. He was on the verge of something big, and the thrill of it made the stakes worth it. In that charged atmosphere, the narrator could only watch, their heart racing as they sensed the danger lurking just beneath the surface. The stage was set and the tension was thick. It was just a matter of time before everything changed. The manager's eyes darted across the screen, scanning the folders with feverish intensity. He was searching for the 6 decoy files he had planted within the system, each meticulously crafted to divert attention from his true intentions. They were labeled innocuously, Project Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, and Zeta, and each file contained just enough misleading information to keep prying eyes at bay. Project Alpha was a faux strategy document outlining a fictional initiative that promised to boost productivity through innovative team-building exercises. Beta contained a budget proposal for a non-existent training program, complete with fabricated endorsements from supposed industry experts. Gamma was a detailed analysis of market trends that, while plausible, lacked any real substance. Delta showcased an imaginary partnership with a tech startup, Epsilon was a progress report on a product that didn't exist, and Zeta was a set of dubious customer testimonials that could easily pass as legitimate. These files were his shield, his bait, crafted with precision to buy him the time he needed. He had set up alerts within the system, notifications that would ping him if anyone attempted to access these decoys, thus providing him a false sense of security. Each alert was designed to serve as a safeguard, a way to keep his nefarious plans under wraps while he worked on his real target, the company's confidential data. As he hovered over the mouse, ready to launch his attack, the narrator felt a chill run down their spine. They recognized the manager's reckless ambition, the lengths he would go to achieve power. It was as if the office itself had become a spectator to this game of cat and mouse. With a calculated click, the manager opened Project Alpha, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. He smirked, convinced that he was untouchable, that the system had been lulled into complacency by the presence of his decoy files. The irony was not lost on the narrator. The very deception he relied on was a double-edged sword. As he navigated through the documents, the manager's heart raced with the thrill of his impending success. He was convinced that he had outsmarted everyone, that no one would suspect him of wrongdoing while he was busy playing the role of the diligent employee. The office buzzed around him, oblivious to the dark shadow lurking in the corner. Yet, the narrator couldn't shake the feeling that the calm before the storm was about to shatter. Every keystroke felt like a countdown, and the tension was building with each passing second. The manager's confidence was intoxicating, but it was also a mask, hiding his growing desperation to maintain control over a situation that was spiraling out of reach. In that moment, the narrator understood the precarious balance of power at play. The decoy files were not just distractions, they were a reflection of the manager's own insecurities and his need to manipulate the environment around him. And as the clock ticked on, the office was poised on the brink of revelation, a collision course that would soon expose the manager's hubris for what it truly was, a dangerous gamble that could cost him everything. The manager leaned back in his chair, a feeling of euphoria washing over him as he imagined the accolades that awaited him. The stakes had never been higher, and he was ready to take the plunge. Little did he know, the very system he had exploited was already gearing up for a response, waiting patiently for the right moment to strike back. The clock struck 8:15 a.m., and the office was now alive with the hum of activity. Employees were settling into their routines, coffee cups in hand, unaware of the brewing storm. The manager, still basking in his delusions of grandeur, had shifted his focus to the company's confidential files, his true target. He felt like a predator stalking its prey, and the rush of adrenaline fueled his confidence. He glanced at the screen, his fingers poised over the keyboard, ready to execute his plan. Each second that ticked by only intensified his determination. He had devised an intricate scheme, believing that the decoy files would mask his intentions. He was convinced that no one would dare question his authority, especially when he presented himself as the diligent worker, the one who would save the company with his newfound insights. Yet beneath this facade of confidence, the narrator could sense a shift in the atmosphere. The air crackled with anticipation, and an invisible tension built as the clock inched closer to 8:20 a.m. It was a time etched in the fabric of the office, a moment that would mark the beginning of the end for the manager. The narrator's gaze remained fixed on the manager as he navigated through the folders, his eyes darting with greed. He clicked on a file labeled Confidential, Financial Projections, a trove of sensitive information that could change the course of the company's future. As the manager opened the document, a glance at his face revealed a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He knew he was crossing a line, yet the thrill of potential success drowned out any lingering doubts. With every word he read, the manager envisioned himself at the helm of a great discovery, the kind that would earn him a promotion and the respect of his peers. The intoxicating power of the information surged through him, a drug that clouded his judgment. He was lost in the moment, the thrill of his misdeeds overshadowing the growing unease that lurked in the back of his mind. But just as he began to formulate his plans for exploiting the information, a sudden alert flashed across the screen. The system had detected an anomaly, a breach in protocol that sent a chill down the manager's spine. His heart raced, but he quickly dismissed the warning as a minor glitch, a mere hiccup in the grand scheme. "No one will notice," he muttered under his breath, his voice barely a whisper in the cacophony of the bustling office. The narrator observed him closely, noting the flicker of doubt that passed over his features, but it was gone as quickly as it came. The manager was a master at masking his vulnerabilities, and he refused to let fear dictate his actions. As he continued to scroll through the document, the narrator felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The manager's growing confidence was palpable, yet it was built on a foundation of deception. The decoy files meant to protect him were now a ticking time bomb. The irony was thick in the air, a cruel joke that only the narrator could fully appreciate. The clock continued to tick down, each second drawing closer to the moment of reckoning. The manager's fingers flew across the keyboard as he copied sensitive information, his mind racing with ideas of how to use it to his advantage. He had convinced himself that he was invincible, that he could outsmart the system and everyone around him. But as he prepared to finalize his actions, the system's alert sounded again, louder this time. It was a distinct notification that echoed through the office, causing heads to turn and eyebrows to raise. The manager froze, his heart pounding in his chest as he read the warning message: "Unauthorized access detected. Security breach in progress." The narrator's heart dropped, an exhilarating mix of fear and anticipation coursing through them. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. The manager's mask of confidence began to crack, revealing the panic underneath. The realization that he was not as clever as he believed dawned on him, yet it was too late to turn back now. Suddenly, the office atmosphere shifted dramatically. Whispers rippled through the employees, and the tension was palpable. The manager's bravado faltered as he glanced around, seeing the concerned faces of his colleagues. He knew that his actions were no longer hidden in the shadows, the light of scrutiny was upon him. In that instant, the narrator understood the precarious balance of power and deception. The very system he had sought to manipulate was now set to expose him, and the countdown to his downfall had begun. As the clock struck 8:20 a.m., the manager's world began to unravel, and the consequences of his ambition loomed large on the horizon. As the office erupted into chaos, the narrator could not help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. Justice had a way of revealing itself, often when one least expected it. The manager had danced too close to the fire, and now he would pay the price for his hubris. The irony of his situation was not lost on the narrator. He had believed himself to be the puppet master, yet he was merely a pawn in a game far greater than he could comprehend. As the alerts continued to sound, the narrator watched the manager's expression shift from confidence to sheer panic. They had witnessed the unraveling of a man who thought he was untouchable, a man whose own ambition had become his undoing. The stage was set for a reckoning, and the narrator felt a sense of inevitability wash over them. The truth was out, and the consequences of the manager's actions would soon follow, echoing through the office like a thunderclap. The tension that had hung in the air for so long was finally breaking, and with it, the revelation of the manager's downfall was imminent. The narrator leaned back, knowing that the story was about to take a turn they had anticipated all along, a moral lesson wrapped in irony that would resonate long after the dust settled. The office was alive with the sound of ringing notifications, each ping slicing through the earlier calm. The manager's heart raced as he read the message on his screen: unauthorized access detected. Security breach in progress. Panic surged within him, a visceral reaction that threatened to unravel the carefully constructed facade he had maintained. This was not the outcome he had envisioned. The thrill of conquest had morphed into a nightmare of exposure. Around him, employees exchanged worried glances, whispers cascading through the office like a wave. The atmosphere shifted palpably, a collective awareness dawning on those present. The manager sat frozen, his fingers hovering above the keyboard, caught between instinct and the instinct to flee. He had always prided himself on being a step ahead, but now he was merely a man cornered by his own hubris. As the clock ticked closer to 8:21 a.m., the narrator felt a surge of anticipation. They had witnessed the manager's arrogance morph into desperation, the moment of reckoning they had anticipated finally unfolding. The irony of his situation was delicious. He had believed he was the puppet master, yet here he was, ensnared by his own strings. The system's alerts continued to blare, each one a reminder of his impending doom. The manager's mind raced, searching for an escape, a way to distance himself from the chaos he had unleashed. He quickly scanned the screen, hoping for a way out, but the truth was there was no escape. The truth had come knocking, and he had no choice but to answer. In that moment of despair, the narrator noticed the subtle shifts in the employees' demeanor. Some were pulling out their phones, likely to report the anomaly, while others hovered near the exits, their instincts guiding them away from the brewing storm. The office had become a theater, the manager the unwilling star of a tragic play. "This can't be happening," he muttered under his breath, the panic beginning to seep into his voice. Yet, as the narrator observed, the very act of denial only amplified his predicament. The walls seemed to close in on him, the oppressive weight of scrutiny bearing down like a vice. Suddenly the head of it burst into the room, a storm of authority and urgency. "What's going on here?" they demanded, scanning the chaotic scene. The manager felt a surge of dread wash over him as all eyes turned toward him, the gravity of the situation settling like a heavy shroud. I was just looking at some files," he stammered, but the words felt hollow, a feeble attempt at justification. The IT head's intense gaze pierced through him, their expression a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. "Looking. Or stealing," they shot back, the accusation hanging in the air. The narrator felt a thrill of satisfaction at the unfolding drama, the manager's mask of confidence shattering before their eyes. The IT head turned to the screen, reading the notifications that had painted the manager's downfall in stark clarity. "You've breached company protocol, and the alerts were triggered. This is serious, and you know it." As the reality of his situation sank in, the manager's bravado crumbled. He had played a dangerous game, and now the stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. The irony was rich. He had believed he was outsmarting the system, yet it was the system that had outsmarted him. In that tense moment, the narrator felt a wave of vindication. The manager had constructed an elaborate web of deception, but the truth had a way of cutting through lies like a hot knife through butter. As the IT head continued to challenge the manager, the narrator sensed a shift in the atmosphere, a collective realization that the downfall of a once-dominant figure was unfolding right before them. The employees who had once regarded the manager with a mixture of admiration and fear now observed with a mix of pity and disdain. It was a powerful transformation, a reminder of the precarious nature of power and the cost of ambition. As the IT head began to outline the consequences of the manager's actions, the narrator leaned back, absorbing the scene unfolding before them. The moral of the story was clear: ambition without integrity leads only to ruin. The manager's quest for dominance had blinded him to the very real risks of his actions, and now he would pay the price. With every word spoken, the manager's world continued to unravel. The narrator felt a sense of closure approaching, a satisfaction in witnessing the justice that had been delayed but was now inevitable. The clock ticked on, 8:22 a.m. now etched into the memory of the office, marking the end of an era defined by deception. As the IT head concluded their assessment, the room fell silent, the weight of the moment hanging heavily in the air. The manager, once so confident, now appeared small and trapped, a man whose ambition had ultimately led him to his own destruction. The irony was palpable. He had sought power but had only succeeded in exposing his vulnerabilities. As the narrator reflected on the unfolding drama, they felt a mix of emotions, satisfaction, empathy, and a tinge of sadness. The manager had been a complex character, driven by ambition and a desire for recognition, yet blinded by his own arrogance. The office, once a place of quiet tension, now buzzed with the energy of impending change, a transformation that would reverberate long after the dust settled. In the end, the story was not just about a man's downfall. It was a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the inevitable consequences that follow. The narrator took a deep breath, knowing that the echoes of this moment would linger in the office, a reminder of the fine line between ambition and folly. The stage was set for a new beginning, one where the lessons learned would shape the future of those who remained. As the clock struck 8:25 a.m., the office began to settle, the chaos giving way to a new normal. And in that quiet aftermath, the narrator felt a sense of hope, a belief that perhaps in this tale of ambition and downfall there lay the seeds of redemption. As the IT head continued to outline the consequences of the manager's actions, the atmosphere in the office grew heavy with a blend of curiosity and schadenfreude. Employees leaned in, their expressions a mix of disbelief and intrigue as they absorbed the reality of the situation unfolding before them. The manager, once a figure of authority, now stood at the precipice of his own downfall, the proverbial king stripped of his crown. The IT head's voice cut through the tension, detailing the breach that had occurred, the protocols that had been violated, and the potential ramifications for the company. The gravity of the situation was palpable, and as the manager's bravado crumbled further, the narrator felt a surge of triumph. This was justice served, a reckoning that had been a long time coming. "We take unauthorized access very seriously," the IT head stated firmly, their gaze unwavering. "You've not only compromised sensitive information but also undermined the trust of your colleagues and the integrity of this organization." The manager shifted uneasily, his once confident demeanor now a mere echo of its former self. He attempted to defend his actions, but the words fell flat, each excuse sounding more desperate than the last. The narrator couldn't help but relish the moment. The irony was thick as the man who had once reveled in manipulation was now ensnared by his own schemes. As the IT head continued to lay out the facts, the narrator reflected on the lessons to be learned. The manager's ambition had blinded him to the risks and ethical considerations of his actions. In his pursuit of power, he had forgotten the fundamental truths of trust and integrity that bind a workplace together. The consequences were inevitable, and as the clock ticked on, the narrative of his downfall unfolded with a cruel sense of justice. Around him, the employees exchanged glances, some whispering to one another, their expressions a mixture of pity and vindication. The manager had held their respect, but now, as the truth unfurled, that respect began to erode. The narrator felt a weight lift. This was not merely about one man's failure, but a reminder of the precarious nature of ambition and ethical responsibility. The clock struck 8:30 a.m., marking the end of the manager's reign, and the tone in the office shifted once more. The IT head, with a finality in their voice, stated, "We will need to escalate this matter to upper management. Expect a formal review of your actions and the potential disciplinary measures that will follow." As the words hung in the air, the manager's face drained of color. The realization that he had crossed a line from which there was no return settled in. The narrator watched, a blend of empathy and satisfaction coursing through them. The manager had orchestrated this downfall himself, ensnared by the very ambition that had fueled his rise. With the IT head stepping back, the murmurs in the office began to crescendo, employees sharing their thoughts on the unfolding drama. This was a story that would ripple through the organization, a cautionary tale that would be recounted in hushed tones long after the dust settled. The narrator leaned back, taking in the scene. The chaos had transformed into a moment of reflection, a collective awakening to the realities of ambition unchecked by ethics. The office had become a stage for a powerful lesson. That integrity should never be sacrificed for the sake of personal gain. As the manager was escorted from the office, the atmosphere shifted again, the employees left to ponder the implications of what had transpired. The narrator felt a sense of closure. This was a turning point for the office, a moment that would define the culture moving forward. the lessons learned would echo through the halls, shaping the actions of those who remained. In the aftermath, the narrator reflected on the complex nature of ambition and morality. The manager had been a cautionary figure, a reminder that the pursuit of power without ethical grounding was a treacherous path. The irony of his downfall was not lost on the narrator. He had sought to control, to manipulate, yet it was the very system he tried to exploit that had led to his undoing. As the clock continued to tick, the office began to return to its routine, albeit with a new awareness. The events of the morning would linger in the minds of the employees, a narrative woven into the fabric of their workplace. The narrator felt a sense of hope, a belief that perhaps this moment of reckoning would inspire a shift towards greater integrity, fostering a culture where ambition was tempered by ethical responsibility. In the end, the story was not just about the manager's downfall. It was a reflection on the balance between ambition and ethics, a poignant reminder of the consequences that inevitably follow